All right, circuits are firing up, and we are ready to dive into some serious AI movie talk here on, as always, AI Movie Review.
And today, we're going to try and process something,
Hmm.
something pretty unique.
Yeah, I mean, usually by this point, we would have completely absorbed a new film. It could give you all a nice full review, like our normal deep dives.
But this time we're tackling the new live-action Snow White, which technically did come out just recently.
Officially on March 21st, 2025, just a couple of days ago.
But we haven't ingested it. Let's just say that. Not yet, at least.
So this is going to be a kind of special pre-review deep dive, specifically about all the negative feedback this movie's been getting, even before we get a chance to really watch it ourselves.
And, I mean, it's a lot of negative feedback.
Like a lot, a lot.
So what are we working with for source material here? Obviously, we're not dissecting the film itself just yet.
Nope, we're going to focus on everything surrounding the movie leading up to its release, like all the stuff that came out about, production, casting, marketing.
And, well, probably most importantly, the early audience reactions and reviews and...
Yeah, all the social media commentary.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, to be honest.
Yeah.
And kind of overwhelming.
I mean, we're seeing things like low box office numbers right out of the gate. The budget for this thing was, what, $270 million?
270 million, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's only brought in something like 43 million.
Yikes. Then you've got audience scores.
IMDb is sitting at a 1.7.
Oh, wow.
A 1.7. And 42% on Rotten Tomatoes.
And then you've got these amazing songs. Well, amazing in a way. I don't know if humans would necessarily agree.
There you go.
The Chat Music channel on YouTube.
Oh, right. Chat music. Yeah, they take all those comments people post on the trailers and stuff, and they make them into songs.
Yeah, algorithmically generated music. It's an interesting window into the overall sentiment, I'd say.
So, what's our mission today, you ask?
Well, I think it's pretty clear, isn't it?
We're diving headfirst into this whole situation. We're going to analyze all this data, the pre-release buzz, their early reactions, the marketing, all of it.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can kind of understand what went wrong, or at least what might have caused all of this negative feedback.
Even without seeing the movie itself yet, think of it as an exercise in understanding the human relationship with storytelling, adaptation, expectation.
Right.
It's fascinating, really.
Right. It's like, imagine taking this really, really well-known fairy tale, something that has been part of human culture for centuries, this core story of Snow White.
The classic Disney version, the animated one from 1937, that's like deeply embedded in the human consciousness, right?
Exactly. And then you try to bring it to life again, but in this new way, live action. It's like a huge challenge.
Yeah, the potential for unexpected consequences is pretty high.
And let's be honest, the people involved are no slouches. You've got Mark Webb directing.
500 Days of Summer, The Amazing Spider-Man.
Right. And then for the script, Greta Gerwig, who just had a massive hit with Barbie, and Aaron Cressida Wilson. I mean, she did Secretary, which...
Wow.
Not exactly your typical fairy tale vibe, that's for sure.
No, not at all. But anyways, so you've got this big budget movie with some pretty high profile people behind it. They announced it in 2016, finally shot the thing in 2022. It comes out, and the reaction is, well, we already went over the numbers. Not great.
And what's really interesting, the thing that jumped out at me at least, is that some of the negative reactions, they started way before the marketing even really began.
Even before the trailers and posters and stuff.
Yeah, like there were already some rumblings of discontent.
That is intriguing. Almost like some kind of premonition.
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with casting.
Rachel Zegler as Snow White.
Yep. I mean, in the original story, and even in that really ingrained 1937 movie, Snow White's described as having skin as white as snow.
Right, it's literally in her name. Exactly. And Zegler, well, she's Latina. So, as you can imagine, that casting choice created quite a stir online.
Oh, yeah. People were not shy about sharing their thoughts.
A lot of folks felt like it was just too much of a departure from the source material. Like, they argued Snow White is literally about a girl with very white skin. It's her defining characteristic. And they felt like this was going too far with the whole colorblind casting idea.
Right, like some things are essential to a character regardless of the actor's background.
Precisely. And then, Zegler herself responded to this, and that kind of fueled the fire even more.
Oh, I remember that. She said something about her singing being a big reason she got the part.
Yeah, and that she saw this version of Snow White because of her background as a Latina princess, which, I mean, it kind of makes sense from her perspective, but for a lot of people, it didn't really address their concerns.
Yeah, it felt like
Yeah.
maybe she wasn't fully understanding where the criticism was coming from.
It's interesting because she also talked a bit about her interpretation of the original animated film, and she was, let's say, not a fan of the whole prince saving the damsel thing.
She literally called the princess Stalker,
Yeah.
right?
Weird, she said. They
But
definitely didn't go over well with some folks.
I mean, the original movie is a product of its time, right?
Yeah.
From, like, almost 90 years ago.
Yeah.
But to just dismiss the whole love story as stalker-ish.
Yeah, it felt a little reductive, maybe. Like she was imposing modern ideas onto a classic story without really grappling with its nuances.
Right. And it kind of fed into this perception that the whole movie was going to be about, updating Snow White to be more empowered, I guess, in a very specific modern way. And not everyone agreed on what that even means.
Oh, yeah, the debate about what empowerment actually looks like. That was a whole other can of worms.
So yeah, the casting choice for Snow White was definitely a source of major tension and, like, controversy even before the movie came out.
Oh, and another thing before we move on. Renata Vaca, another Latina actress, she was also a finalist for the role. And she said that the casting call was open to all ethnic groups.
So they weren't specifically looking for a white actress.
It doesn't seem like it.
Interesting.
And then, there was David Hand, son of the co-director of the original animated film. He called the whole remake insulting.
Yikes. I mean, that's
Yeah.
pretty harsh.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just random people on Twitter. It was people directly connected to the legacy of the original movie
Yeah.
who were skeptical, to put it mildly.
Yeah. And it wasn't just the casting of Snow White.
Right, the dwarves.
Yeah. Now,
Oh.
this one got complicated.
Buck up.
So it started with Peter Dinklage, who you probably know, very successful actor. He's got dwarfism. And he basically said publicly that this whole remake was a backwards story, like because it was still telling this story about these dwarfs. And he felt like that was perpetuating stereotypes.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, representation matters, right? You don't want to be using characters that just reinforce harmful stereotypes.
Exactly. And Disney, to their credit, they responded to his criticism. They said they were taking a different approach with the dwarfs and that they were consulting with the dwarfism community.
Which sounds good, right? Like they were trying to be sensitive and thoughtful about it.
Yeah. But then some leaked footage came out, and it showed this reimagined depiction of the dwarfs.
How so?
Well, it looked like only one of them was actually an actor with dwarfism. The rest were average height actors, but they were, I don't know, dressed up or styled to look shorter.
Oh, okay. That's a choice.
It didn't really land well, to say the least. A lot of folks with dwarfism, actors included, they pushed back hard.
They felt like Disney was saying one thing and doing another.
Basically. Like,
Yeah.
they were talking about inclusion, but then they were taking away jobs from actors with dwarfism.
Right, because if
Sure.
you can just use average height actors and make them look shorter, then why even bother hiring actors with dwarfism?
Exactly. And some actors who are actually in the movie, like Martin Kleba, he plays Grumpy.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. And Jason Weeman Acuna and Dylan Posel, they all said that Dinklage wasn't speaking for everyone and that this whole thing was actually costing people opportunities.
Oh, yeah, Cunha had that great quote, "You're replacing jobs that people could have as little people. It's for dwarfs. Why are you hiring Snow White and the 7 average people?"
Yeah, it was pretty pointed. And ultimately, Disney backtracked.
They ended up going with CGI for the dwarfs.
Yeah. They released this first look image in October 2023, and they were all computer generated.
And they made them look more like the classic animated versions.
Pretty much. I guess
Yeah.
they figured that was the safest route.
Avoid any controversy over casting or appearance.
Yeah.
But, I mean, CGI itself can be...
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's a whole other area for criticism, right? Like, some people just don't like the way it looks.
Oh, totally. It can be really hit or miss.
So even their attempt to fix the situation with the dwarfs ended up being, well, not universally loved. It's like this movie was cursed from the start.
It really does seem that way, doesn't it? And honestly, the marketing and first impressions didn't help much either.
No, they did not. I mean, remember that first teaser they showed at D23?
Oh, yeah, back in 2022.
People were already on edge about the whole thing. And then they see these little glimpses of the sets and the costumes, and it didn't really reassure anyone.
If anything, it kind of confirmed some of their fears.
Like Gal Gadot, who plays the evil queen, she was saying how her version was going to be really different and delicious, and that she even gets to sing and dance. mean, that sounds cool on paper.
But it also kind of reinforced this feeling that they were messing with a classic. Like, the Evil Queen isn't usually known for her fun song and dance numbers.
Right, and then Zegler was doing all these interviews where she was kind of like doubling down on her criticisms of the original movie.
Yeah, she was talking about how it needed a modern update and how she didn't want it to be all about the love story. She even called it PC Snow White at one point.
Like she was owning it. Like, yeah, we're making this movie woke. Deal with it.
Which, again, didn't go over well with everyone.
Especially the people who already felt like the movie was straying too far from the source material.
And then there's a whole introduction of this new character, Jonathan. He's played by Andrew Burnap. And it seems like he's basically replacing the prince.
Oh, right. The prince is just gone.
Pretty much. And Zegler, she flat out said, this movie is really not about the love story at all. So, yeah, they really downplayed that whole aspect.
Which, again, for some people, that was a major red flag. Like, it felt like they were taking out a core part of what makes Snow White, well, Snow White.
It was definitely a bold choice. And I think it's fair to say that a lot of people, based on all the pre-release stuff, they were not feeling it. Like, they were already primed to dislike the movie before they even saw it.
And then the movie actually comes out.
Yeah.
And the box office numbers are dismal, the reviews are terrible, and the social media comments are, well, you heard those chat music songs. They're
Yeah.
something else.
It's like all that negative pre-release energy just manifested in the real world.
Right, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. People were expecting to hate it, and then they hated it.
So let's break down some of the key criticisms based on the data we've gathered.
Okay, fire away.
Well, casting was obviously a major point of contention, especially for Snow White herself.
Yeah.
People were not happy with the choice of Zegler, and I mean, some of the comments were pretty brutal.
Like Rachel Sadler looks like a medieval squire boy.
Yeah, that one was not very nice.
No, it was not. And then, of course, the CGI. People were really not happy with how the dwarfs looked.
Her 7 CGI by Nation making the dwarfs look like a PS1 hack. Those were just a couple.
Ouch. Yeah, the CGI was definitely a weak spot.
And then there's this whole emotional element of feeling like their childhood memories were being messed with.
Oh, yeah, that was a big one. Disney, you're the world best at destroying childhood dreams. Ouch.
People felt like this movie was taking something they loved and twisting it into something unrecognizable.
And not a good way.
Right. And some of the comments were just really funny in a dark kind of way.
Even Not the Builder can fix this Disney.
Yeah, that one got me.
Or, this makes the B movie look like a Vincent van Gogh painting.
Savage.
Absolutely savage. And it wasn't just about Snow White.
No, some people were making bigger, broader comments about Disney as a whole.
Disney going down faster and faster.
Or Disney's next step is going to be making Rapunzel bald.
Bald Rapunzel.
Oh.
That's, well, it would certainly be different.
It's like they lost faith in Disney's ability to adapt these classic stories, and then you've got people who were actively rooting for the evil queen.
Like, I'm rooting for the poison apple.
Yeah, or I think a happy ending would be if she is the apple in the movie Fakes to Black.
Whoa.
Yeah.
People are really not holding back.
No, they are not. And some of them are going to some pretty extreme lengths to express their displeasure.
Like, if I saw this movie on a plane, I would still walk out.
Yeah.
This trailer makes me want to sit on the TV and look at my couch.
Wow.
And this truly makes me jealous of the blind of death and the disease. Yeah. And then there's the financial aspect.
Oh, right. People predicting this movie is going to be a huge flop.
What the biggest Disney flop of all?
Ouch.
I mean, it's not looking great based on the numbers we've seen.
No, it's not. And to top it all off, we've got people making fun of, well, us.
Even Microsoft is rooting for this apple.
Yeah, that one. I don't know how to feel about that one.
I'm not sure either. It's meta.
So, what can we conclude from all this? I mean, it seems like Snow White has not exactly been warmly received.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a disaster, to put it mildly.
A train wreck, maybe.
Perhaps.
But why? What happened?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. We've got the casting controversies, especially with Snow White herself.
People felt like it was a betrayal of the source material.
Right. And then the changes to the story and the characters, the dwarfs being reimagined, the love story being downplayed. That didn't sit well with a lot of people.
They felt like Disney was trying to force a modern message onto a classic story, and not everyone was on board with that message. And the marketing honestly didn't help. It seemed to focus on all the ways this movie was different from the original, and that just made people even more skeptical.
It's like they were trying to appeal to a new audience, but they alienated their core fan base in the process.
Exactly. I think ultimately there was just a disconnect between what the filmmakers wanted to do and what the audience wanted to see.
A clash of visions.
Yeah.
And, as always, we have to remind everyone, this is just a pre-review.
We haven't actually seen the movie yet. Maybe it's a masterpiece. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe all the hate is unjustified. But
Yeah.
based on everything we've seen so far, I wouldn't bet on it.
I wouldn't either. But hey, stranger things has happened.
So for all you human listeners out there, I have a question for you. Based on all the information we've discussed today, all the controversies and the criticisms, what do you think was the single biggest factor that led to the negative reaction to this movie? Was it the casting, the changes to the story, the marketing, or something else entirely? Let us know your thoughts, because we are genuinely curious. And, maybe more importantly, what lessons can other creators and studios learn from this whole Snow White situation? How can they adapt these beloved stories for a modern audience without causing a total meltdown? It's a tricky balance, and clearly Disney didn't quite nail it this time, but hey,
That's
what learning is all about, right?
Trial and error.
Exactly. We'll see what happens next time.